how you feel when all you do is break people down. Be real. Don't let it happen now. Let it go. I'll free my soul. That's why I love you. Feel it here to stay. I woke up blessed, and I'm keeping my praise. Today, I'm so strong. Don't need no shade. You can keep that way. I'm good. I'm good with that. How you wake up, better somebody else's life. Couldn't be me. You wake up talking before you even pray. All that negativity, what a heavy way to start your day. Running people down like it feeds your soul. But every word you throw in, taking on untold. Tell me how it feels, carrying all that weight. Hate you giving, and sit on your plate. Feeling good today, smile on my face, ain't going away. You can talk, you can say what you say, but I'm too blessed, I won't carry that weight. Feeling good today, like yeah, I'm moving my way. You can keep all that today, I'm good today. Rolling, watching, waiting on us all. But I'm up here rising, I don't feel that at all. You throw little words like they don't come. But energy circles, remember that. You sleep at night, and noise inside. Let mine go. That's why I'm feeling good today. Nothing can be on a fade away. You can talk, but I won't engage. These two will gonna take my place. I'm feeling good today. Woke up right. I'm staying that way. You can keep all that faith. I'm good. I'm good today. How you feel when all you do is break people down? Be real. Don't let it happen now. Let it go. I'll free my soul. That's why I love you. Feel it's here to stay. I woke up blessed, and I'm keeping my friends. Today, I'm so strong. Don't need no shade. You can keep that way. I'm good. I'm good today. I'm good today. Peace and blessings. I pray that you're good today, that you can join in that refrain. Great to see all of you this morning as we prepare ourselves to get started. I see our Zoom roomers are here. I want to say good morning to you all. I want to say good morning to those of you who are over in the YouTube channel. Peace and welcome. If this is your first time with us, we welcome you to our community. If you've been here before, welcome back. Either way, I'm glad that you're here. My name is Greg Stanton. I'm also known as a SAR, your melanated metaphysical mystic. I serve as the facilitator of the Sunday of Science Successful Living seminars here at Oasis Everywhere. It's a community built on not what you must believe, but on who you are becoming. So today, we begin something new, a 5-week seminar that I've labeled What the Fall Couldn't Take. And before we explore where we're going, I want to start somewhere very small, somewhere very human on this morning. And you can follow along with me on our slides this morning as we move forward. This is week 1 of 5, and I want you to know that we're looking at what the fall couldn't take. It's about reclaiming our sovereignty. So I want you to track with me this week as we move forward on today. So, have you ever done something, said something, felt something, desired something, and immediately, before anyone said a word to you, you felt it? That quiet drop in your chest, in your spirit, as you may say, that something is wrong with me. Not I made a mistake, something deeper than that. Something is wrong with me. Maybe it showed up when you were a teenager or younger than that, and you got caught in a lie. Maybe it showed up in a marriage, in a relapse, suddenly in a moment of anger. Maybe it's showing up right now, this morning, in this season, for reasons you really can't even fully understand. This feeling that we're talking about this morning has a name. Has a name. Most of us were handed it before we were ever old enough to question it. It's called sin consciousness, that quiet, constant suspicion that your very nature itself is the problem, that you and I, underneath it all, are flawed, that we're broken, that we're in need of fixing, correcting, and what the church says, saving. When you see someone with a flaw, often you'll hear church folks say they need to be saved. But I want to ask you something this morning. Where does that feeling actually come from? That feeling that you have when you are feeling like you're not connected. Where is it coming from? It's not necessarily that there's something wrong with you. It's a feeling most of us have never questioned. But this morning, we want to look at it. We want to look at what is actually sin consciousness and how does it impact us. For most of us in this community, on this call today, we were raised or you were raised within the Christian tradition. That feeling that has a attached there. I mean, there's a verse that is attached to that. Um, Whether you could quote it or not, it's the scripture. That scripture regarding David. We talked about it briefly in the 51st division of Psalm after his affair with Bathsheba, um, who says this to God. This is what he says. Behold, I was conceived, or I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. I want you to sit with that for a second. Second, not I sinned, I was born in sin. Not I did not that I did something wrong. I was wrong from the beginning. We look at this single verse written by what I would call a grieving, guilt-ridden king who was in the middle of the worst moment of his life. He became, um, over centuries, one of the load-bearing walls of an entire theological house. Meaning, what I'm meaning by that is this scripture has a lot of us pin our theology on it. That is original sin. That is being born broken, born separate from God, born needing rescue before we ever did a single thing to deserve it. I want to be careful this morning, though, because I'm not here to make light of a teaching that many of us were given, still hold on to. I'm not necessarily trying to mock David or dismiss the weight of what was going on in his life or what he was feeling. For when we look at David, he was a real man in real anguish. But this morning, diviners, our personal guilt is not the same thing as cosmological truth. In psychological terms, David was David was describing what shame feels like. He was not handing down a verdict on the nature of every soul that would ever be born after him. What happened over the centuries that followed was poor biblical exegesis. In plain terms, what has happened, there's been a misreading of one man's grief as if it was universal law. Looking into his journal, we take it on as what was written was law. But any of us know when we are writing in a journal, we're writing what we're thinking, we're writing what we're feeling. And a lot of times, what we're thinking and feeling is not really in alignment with truth. It may be our belief, it may be what we're feeling in a moment. And then somebody comes along and reads our journal because of our position, believes that it's theologically sound, perhaps. But that's what has happened. One man's grief has become a theological wall that we run into, a verdict on guilt, not a verdict on nature. So that's what it's about. That was his guilt he was dealing with. That was his shame. And the way he framed it doesn't necessarily make it a truth. That is not the truth that you have to subscribe to. And we want to be aware of that this morning. I want you to take you back in an antiquity, somewhere older than Psalms 51, somewhere where most of us were never told to look. That is ancient Kemet, and we now call it Egypt. There's a story that's older than the cross, older than David, older than the temples, and it's the story of Asar. You've heard me speak to it in times gone by. Asar was whole, he was complete, a sovereign being, fully himself, fully in his power. His brother Set, also metaphysically meaning chaos, ego, disruption, could not stand that wholeness. So Set killed him, dismembered him, scattered the pieces across the land. Now, this is a story. This is a story that predates any of the biblical stories. Just like the biblical stories, this is not a real character, but it's these names, these individuals are teaching us a truth. But this story is about fragmentation. Does that sound similar? But here is the part almost no one tells us. The part that changes everything. The scattering never touched what Asar was. Set, today we call it Satan, could break the body. Set could break the nature, the sovereignty, the divine essence, the Asarness of Asar was untouched. There's some things that nothing can touch. Okay, it was just waiting to be recovered. And many of us are in that same predicament today. We have failed to realize how powerful we are. Okay, so this, when we look at this, don't look at it just as religious folklore. Uh, to me, I don't look at it this way. For me, this is a precise description I've ever found of what actually happened to us, what happens to all of us. We see here the sovereignty, the divine essence, the Asarness of Asar untouched, waiting to be recovered. And that's the same with each of us. We have, over the course of our lives, become scattered, dismembered. And a good example of that, the moment you're born into this earth, you start growing away from what I would say is of God. You start taking on the beliefs of your family. You start living inside of limitation, limiting thoughts, everything that has to do with just acclimating or growing into the family of origin, into the culture, into the community. And but we have to understand that these things can touch the nature of who we are, but it can't really reach the sovereignty, but it can cloak it, it can hide it, it can cause us to have what I call spiritual amnesia. and it erases the divineness of who we are. So when we look at that this morning, well, let's look at a couple things. Let's look at what got covered. Here's what I want you to receive in this brief conversation this morning as I try to explain it as plain as I can. The fall is not first a punishment, it's really a descent. Every one of us descended from pure potential into this human form. And that descent itself is what first scattered the awareness. Then life added its own specific weight on top of it, of the universal descent that we all come into. A verse was handed to you in childhood, a church that made you feel small, a family that needed you to play a role to keep the peace. Different shapes, same root. The descent scattered your awareness. None of it ever scattered your true nature. What got covered was not your worth, it was your memory of your worth. What got buried was not your divinity, it was your relationship to your divinity. Now, no matter how many well scripted messages told you that you were broken, busted, and disgusted, none of that ever touched what you actually are. It maybe buried it, maybe covered it up. You are not and have never been a broken thing waiting to be fixed. I know there's so many people who have made a living on keeping you broke, keeping you continually trying to get fixed. But you are an aspect of source. And I say that frequently, but if we only grasp that we're not separate from source, not the entirety of it, but a specific unrepeatable expression of it. That's what each of us are. I am not the entirety of source, but I am a specific, unrepeatable expression of it. There's no one else like me. There's no one else like you. And that was true the day that you were born, and it was true the day that Psalms 51 was written, and it's true in this room, in this space, in the right now of right here. You're perfect, you're whole, you're complete. You just have to be remembered. You just have to be put back together. That is what I mean, that is reconnected to the source from which you came. The fall has obscured, it did not destroy. What's get placed over something can always be removed. So we've been covered over, but that can be removed. We can be uncovered. We can recover that. I want you to, I want to offer you something. I want you to sit with this for just a moment while we are together here. If you're able right now, just close your eyes if it feels right, or just soften your glaze. Think of the earliest moment you can remember feeling that quiet suspicion, the suspicion that something is wrong with me. I don't want you to relive it. I just want you to name it, just even silently. Now ask yourself, in that moment, did anything about your actual nature change? Or did something simply get placed over what was already there? A veil. That's the whole seminar today, right there. If you only remember one thing, nothing was taken from your nature. Something was placed over your awareness of it. And for many of us, it's been theology. It's been the church that has gotten us in a transactional relationship with source, that we must do this to get that, instead of being in a true relational relationship with source. And this uh, theological cloak, this religious cloak, it has been placed over our awareness of who we are. And the beauty of this realization that you come to this morning is that what gets placed over something can also be removed. I want you to know that. No matter how deep you've been into a particular spiritual path or religious system that has covered you over, that has played you down, you can come out from underneath it. You can pull the cover back. You can pull back these beliefs that have just held you hostage and keep you playing small. So, uh, now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, Asar, that's a nice acorn and oak metaphor. By my greatness, my design is unchanged. But I still feel I owe somebody an apology for something, that I must do something transactional to be accepted, to earn my alignment with source or even with myself. And that's what you have to come to grips with and stop struggling with, that you don't owe source anything, that there's nothing that can separate you from the love of source. In this old church, we would say the love of God. The diviners, each of you, I understand. Sin consciousness doesn't leave because you heard one good message or insightful teaching about it. It leaves the way it arrived, slowly, with repetition, with a new pattern replacing the old one. We're not pretending the residue isn't real. We're just naming clearly the residue is not the truth. Know that you are complete. You're not a fragment. The whole thing is waiting. So an acorn already contains the oak. You see the oak tree there? Completely. Not as a fragment of it, as the whole thing waiting. The acorn doesn't perform oakness. It doesn't ask permission to become what it already is. It doesn't need an institution or individuals standing between it and the sunlight. It simply, naturally, sovereignly becomes what it always already was. You know, that's you. The oak was never missing. It was just covered by soil for a season. And the soil, the soil isn't punishment. The soil is just where seeds wait before they rise. And when the world seems to be crushing you, it's breaking that shell so you can come forth. So you don't need permission to stand in your alignment, your oneness with God. There's no performance that is required of you. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to give another dollar. You just have to come to the awareness, to the consciousness that you are a divine spark, that you are an aspect of source. And that's what we are all lacking when we vacillate from in between our humanness and our divineness. We want to take on, we want to step into our true divinity. We step into I'm a king, I'm a queen, but I'm divine is the most powerful thing that you can say to yourself. So, what does that mean for how you actually live this week in particular? It means you can lay down the necessity of buying into a narrative of redemption that depends on someone else's sacrifice on your behalf, as if your worth were a debt that only one act by one person for all mankind could ever settle. You were never that broken to begin with. It's all been a story, it's all been a narrative. Now, first, this week, when the old voice shows up, your enemy, which is your enemy, the one that will whisper something is wrong with you, the one that will identify maybe a character flaw, you now have a question to ask it back. Is this about my nature or is it just old soil? because your nature is you're divine. Now, secondly, this week, I want you to know this. You don't need to wait for anyone, anything, an institution, a verse, or another person's permission to know your own worth. That worth was never theirs to grant to you, which means it was never theirs to withhold either. And so the illusion is someone has to take something, give something to you. No, the truth is you have to step into your power, take your power back. Too many of us are rehearsing old stories, old narratives. We have an entire people group waiting for someone to give something to us. In reality, as long as you wait on someone to give it to you, they can also take it away from you. But when you step inside of your sovereign self, your sovereignty, when you realize that you are the captain of your ship, when you realize that you are the author and you have authorship of your life, things change. And thirdly, every time you choose this week to see yourself as whole rather than broken, you are not being naive. You're not just stating something in hopes that it clicks in. You're actually being accurate. You are seeing what was always actually true beneath what you were told. You are actualizing your divine essence. So this week, you're going to ask the old voice, is it nature? Is it truly the nature of who you are or old soil? When the inner critic shows up, meet it with a question instead of an argument. Your worth was never theirs to grant. We've given our power to so many people. We're waiting on the approval of others. Even when we await on and here's one, here's a theological example. Many people would say, if it's the Lord's will and the creek don't rise, when you say I'll see you tomorrow, if it's when it's that religious spirit that creeps in that says that I don't have authority over my life. It is saying that God has authority, that it's orchestrating my life. But that's not true. He says, you have not because you ask not. That is, that word ask means decree. You have not decreed the thing, but you're asking for the thing. You don't realize that in Genesis chapter 1, you not only created in his image and after his likeness, but you were given dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the face of the earth. And this dominion does not give you authority over anyone else's life. It's just you have dominion over your life. You have authorship over your life. So source is not waiting to grant something to you that is already given to you. You got to understand, seeing yourself as a whole is accurate. No longer repeating, I'm imperfect. I have limitations, but you're perfect, whole, and complete. And so don't compete with that old narrative. So let me bring this together this morning. One, sin consciousness was handed to many of us through a single verse that was written in a moment of human grief, not cosmological law. Know that. Second thing we focus on, the fall is the descent itself. So when we talk about the fall, it aligns with sin. But when you understand, it's really a metaphysical story about the descent from spirit to natural. The fall is this descent itself, the universal passage from pure potential into human form. From some of us, for some of us, that descent carried no single traumatic wound. It simply meant absorbing what our family, culture, community handed us and learning to depend on the five senses, the carnal mind, rather than on what we already carried within us. For others, it came wrapped in a specific verse, a specific church, a specific family role. Either way, it scattered the awareness. It never touched the nature. And I want you to know that. Thirdly, embrace this truth. You are an aspect of source, specific and unrepeatable, and that has been true since before anyone ever told you otherwise. Paul doesn't open his letter to Galatians by condemning them. He asks the question, who have bewitched you? Because before there was a transformation, there must be recognition that something has interrupted your perception. Bewitchment is not the loss of your divine nature. It is the loss of awareness of your divine nature. You didn't become less than an aspect of source. You simply accepted a story that said you were. You accepted the biblical story that says that we will be hewer of waters, drawer of waters, hewer of wood. That because of our skin, or because we come from a certain family lineage, we were regulated to being less than. It's the stories, it's the narratives that we embrace that get in the way. So we have to learn to embrace truth, not your personal truth, but universal truth. You have to watch the narratives that has been given to us, that has been given to you by sometimes well-meaning people. You got to pay attention. You got to listen to the story. When I was a kid, we could not say a lie. We would say a story. You were telling a story. And the reality is, I'm glad that was imposed on us, because now when I hear a story, I know a story can mean it's a lie. You're just telling an outright bald-faced lie. And when we look at many of the teachings that have been given to us, they're just outright lies, because somebody benefits from it other than yourself. So sin consciousness, the fall is the descent itself. It wasn't you fell from grace. You left the pure potential of being totally one with source to being outsourced into the individual that you are. And the third thing this morning that we have to, let me go back to that. That third thing that we want to really understand, you have to see yourself, that is, who have bewitched me? Where has the bewitching come from? It's not, when we talk about bewitchment, it's not losing your divine nature. Is it, how did I lose the awareness of it? How did I lose the awareness of who I really am? It's like the story of the chicken and the eagle on last week. Because he's around a bunch of chickens, he took on the behaviors of chickens. And you got to ask yourself, who am I around that is causing me harm? I'm taking on the limiting beliefs that they have when I'm greater. And I want you to know that this morning. I want you to know that Source desires for you to be better than you've been showing up. Source desires that you show up as an aspect of itself. Now, this morning, before we close, I want to speak briefly, as I do each week, to the principle of circulation. Everything in nature moves, energy flows, and what we give returns to us in kind. These Sunday seminars exist because people invest in them with their presence, with their support. If this has been a place of value for you this morning, I personally invite you to support it, continuation, in whatever way feels aligned with you. I'm not making appeal for greed or need, but I understand the principles. I want you to give this morning from a place of abundance, not from obligation. And if today isn't the season for that, simply being here is enough. But if you desire to give this morning, you can give by way of Zelle or Cash App at 708-368-1076. And I appreciate your participation by giving on this morning. All right. So let us pray. Let us close with an affirmative prayer. Okay. We don't beg for what we need. We affirm what is already true. Every person in this space right now is whole this morning. So right where you are, just close your eyes. And I want to close with this affirmative prayer. In the tradition of what I like to call noun thought, we don't beg for our needs. We affirm what is already true. We collapse the to put the potential into the reality. So I affirm that every person in this place, in this space is whole, not becoming whole, already whole, at the level of their truest nature. I affirm that nothing in any soul's history has ever touched the sovereignty that Source placed within them. The covering is not the truth. The truth was never covered enough to disappear. I affirm this morning that what is rising in each of us today is not new. It's remembered. And so it is. Ashe. Amen. What the fall, the descent into human form couldn't take, that's not just a title for the series that we're in. That's a description of what's true about you and I right now in this room. We came in carrying a question. You maybe didn't have words for it, but you're leaving. You're leaving with this morning. Nothing essential was ever lost. It was covered. And we have 4 more Sundays to keep uncovering it together. So if you're new to this, with the, we invite you. We invite you to stay for our green room this morning. For our green room conversation, and after this, if you want to, you can just, if you're joining us in the green room, just unmute yourself and introduce yourself. You can ask questions. The community is built on real conversation. For those of you who need to go, go in peace and carry this with you. Hotep, peace. And so it is. All right, let me stop the share and open up the green room. For those of you who are in the YouTube space this morning, I say welcome to you. Let me see if I can get over to you and see if there's any questions there. And as usual, where that screen go, it pops out after a while, I guess. I don't see it there, but we're going to continue on this morning. For those of you who are with me in the Zoom room, I say welcome. If you have a aha moment, if you have a question, if you have something you want to share, just go ahead and raise your hand and I will acknowledge you. So let me see if there was any comments going on in the chat this morning. We want to say grand rising to everyone. Yes, Rachel, it's good to see you. Rachel said, we descended from a state of pure love and light. Our awakening journey is a yearning to return to our state of original being. Remembrance, similar to Sankofa. That's right. Go back and fetch it. But notice that only the head of that bird is looking back. His feet are still facing forward. You can look back, but don't turn back. Because sometimes when you're turning back, you go through all of the trauma that came between where you are now and when you first came into the realization of being a divine being as a child. And you don't need to go back through all that trauma. But we do want to do is reconnect ourselves to a real story that we are one with Source and that each of us are an aspect of Source. And by me watching your life, which is a living epistle, I can learn some things. I can see some things about Source that Source is not a respect of persons. I don't have to go through what you've gone through to get the blessing. I can get the blessing in observing the lesson. All right, I don't see any hands up this morning. Uh, oh yeah, there you go. Good morning, Rachel. You have the mic. Let me unmute you there. Okay, you can unmute yourself there, Rachel. All right. So, Rachel, you still there? There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're traveling, so I'm hoping that you can hear me. I
Yes.
thank you so much for this message. This is truly a freeing message for me, and you hit on so many good points because sometimes even when I wake up early and not early over in the night, that that inner critic. Sometimes I wonder when would this inner critic stop? But that less than that, as you say, that sin consciousness, um, that in the indoctrination of that particular thing that we were taught and indoctrinated for is shaped from Psalms, I think Psalm 51,
51, correct.
because um, I hear that a lot, and we quoted it in the old church, and it's like a badge of honor. I was born and shaped in iniquity. In my mama, we was conceived in sin, paraphrasing. And it's almost like the religious community, our community just we wear it as a badge of honor, and I almost like it's in a that's my whole total makeup. But another thing I remembered was this a well-known podcast, and she's a minister too. She was ministering to some children, and it just broke my heart to hear, her say to these children how if it wasn't for Jesus, that you all deserve to die. She was just telling them such horrific things and how terrible they was, and that if they were, and that if it wasn't for Jesus, how terrible they was. And the little kids were just looking at it as though, what did we do? And it was just kind of really, really heartbreaking to hear that. And just the indoctrination of teaching that we are less than. You were
Hmm.
born less than. You were
Hmm.
born already flawed. But thank you for allowing me to share
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that forward. You guys have safe travels. We have made our relationship with Source so transactional, and we uh, indoctrinate our children into that by having that conversation. What it does is solidifies the need to always be on the treadmill of transaction. I got to keep praying. I got to keep going to church. I got to keep doing, and we never be the oneness of being. And so I hope these types of teachings help us to see how things that we have been taught can get in the way of us showing up as our best selves. And we still have to struggle with that. When we look at even the conversation of sexuality, born in sin, shaped in iniquity, and so that even to say, even though my mother, or David's mom and dad were married, he was birthed in sin. And so we have this concept about even with sexuality that it's bad. And we have to understand that it's part of the process that is necessary to bring another child into the earth. But we're not bringing a child into the earth and they born into sin. They're born into an assignment. And it's our roles as parents to help that child stay in alignment. The moment a child is born, it is as aligned as it could ever be. But what we do is we take it further and further away by having it become dependent on its senses, by having it be dependent on the cultural things that we put into its life. So we got to uncover, we got to remove all of this mess that we've been covered up with. We got to rise again, each of us. Thank you for that this morning, Rachel. You guys have a safe trip. All right. Any other comments? Any insights? I know sometimes when you're listening, you have your own insights, and I'm open, and this community is open to hear them also. All right. I see another hand. Good morning, Myrna. You have the mic.
Good morning. Good
Grand
morning.
Rising. How's it going?
Grand Rising.
What's the weather like down there in hot Atlanta?
It is so not hot. It's so wonderful. Mind you, right now, in a few hours, it's going to be hot.
Right.
Was yesterday, but right now, have no idea what the temperature is, but I am outside in my backyard and on my back porch, and truly grateful to be surrounded by trees, and getting
Mm,
oxygen from the trees. And so I'm very, 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 very grateful to be where I am. This morning, Source in my devotional time said how for me to see me, how do I see me, how do I look at myself, um and I was thinking about that, and of course in the space of where I go is critiquing you know um and it was like, not the outward, not the physical. I need you to go deep inside. How do you see? and
mm,
um and so um when you were asking the questions in your teaching today, and to go back to that first time when I challenged or questioned myself, it actually was not in a church setting. It was in a setting where I was a bunch was around a bunch of other folks that were my peers, and I didn't fit in. I didn't I all the things that I did to try to fit in, I didn't fit in. And that made me always feel like, wow, something about me, something that they've got something and I don't have. Um and 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 to recognize that, oh, I've come to that place, but I often go back in memory to that because I have to go there to recognize and remember that, oh, I'm like that eagle. Like, oh, I'm not supposed to be like them. Nothing wrong with them, no judgment against them. They're just not like me, and I'm not like them. And the okay of the okayness of that within myself. But it didn't feel good, and it never feels good, because
right.
even yet still today, when I'm in situations, I'm reminded of that moment, because I'll be someplace and I'll feel like, oh, wait a minute. This is familiar. I don't fit. Um, and or at least and in that I don't fit, it may not be about I don't fit. It's I need to be who I am in that moment, as opposed
Mm,
to as opposed as opposed to trying to or step away to step out. No, stand in my strength and in my power. In my presence, more than power, because all of that's, I know, locked up in there, but in my presence, and not step away, but just stand and then allow things to unfold. But that's a learning. That's not a anything other than a learning to stand in it, as opposed to try to either step out, which is what I've done in the past. Let me get out of here. I don't belong in here. This
right.
is not where I need to be.
Right.
As opposed, yes, you're in there and that's where you're supposed to be. Stand in it.
Yeah.
Stand. And so now I'm learning, as a result of this message, just to be thoughtful of no staying, sticking and staying in that. Something else I want to just kind of put out, because in terms of the language, um, a song that so many people love, and one, it always rubbed me the wrong way, and also two, understanding who wrote the lyrics of the song.
Mm,
And that's the song Amazing Grace. So many people love that song, and it's a beautiful melody. Why? Because it's an African sorrow song. um and whenever I'm asked to sing it now, I don't sing the first verse. I'll hum the first verse, because I'm not a wretch.
that's right. Right.
And
Right.
and so when I hear people, well, that was a white man feeling really bad about the fact that he was taking slaves, someplace. And so yeah, he was a wretch. But that doesn't mean
Right.
we're the wretch.
Exactly. That's his state.
That's his statement, not the statement of others. And it's like a worm like me, like some songs of the worm like me, and all of this. It's like, oh my gosh, wow, we are we some awful critters, you
Right.
know.
We've been bewitched.
Exactly. And so I will take ownership of the song, since I'm singing it, and hum it, and then go to the second verse and sing the second verse, because I love the second verse. It's a wonderful second verse, because I've gone past that, and it's so much that we can consciously change about things to make them correct in this moment, correct in for our own inner soul and for our own inner being. So thank you for your teaching.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so with you. I hate when I normally when I'm doing a eulogy or a homegoing service, and the singer who comes before me, I'll ask them, what are you singing? And if they tell me they're singing Amazing Grace, I would ask them, please change that song, sing something else, because that song
Oh, we
that
lost. Okay.
that
That
was
song, what? We lost you.
Oh, even the song. Okay, so I request that they don't sing Amazing Grace, and
Right.
then I was saying that even when we look at David, when he says "born in sin, shaped in iniquity," that's another thing. That was his story, and what happens is we allow others people's story to become our story, and who our story is such a mystery to each of us. Now, you said something earlier that I really resonated with, and I don't want us to skip over. Sometimes we don't feel like we fit. Now, one of the first things in your journey of life is remember when Abraham was told to get away from his family? Because as long as you're with your family, that's a familiar place. Longer when you with your family, you don't really see your greatness. You don't see your authenticity. But when you get away from your family and you go into a foreign place, a foreign place, you definitely don't fit immediately. But then you have to, look out. It's my assignment. This is where I'm supposed to be. So we got to ask ourselves when we start having these questions: Am am I, why I don't fit in? Should you be fitting in? And are you in the right place? Are you on assignment? Because sometimes it takes being in a different place to activate your superpowers, to not depend on what is familiar. And so we all have to know that not a one of us is alike. Even though we are similar, we're not alike. We're not the same. And we have to make room for our uniqueness. And if you're so concerned about fitting in, you will not allow your uniqueness to show up. Not you, Myrna. I'm just saying all of us. So
Oh, no, me
we
too.
right, okay. We want to fit in because we've been taught to conform, we've been taught to not stand out. But if you really gonna be your authentic self, you got to be willing to stand out. You got to be willing to let your light shine. You cannot say that you're a sovereign being if you are sold on being human and like everybody else. I'm not a mere human. I'm a divine spiritual being having a human experience. Mastering that thing, that's what it's about. And then earlier, Rachel, you had said something about will that voice ever go away? No, it will never go away. It's
Right, right.
always going to be there. Now, the volume will get turned down, and then ultimately, but it always look for a place to raise its ugly head when there's a flaw. Sometimes it will use that flaw or validate that flaw to say you're only human, but you're more than human. You're more than a conqueror. That's what Paul told us. Awesome. Excellent. Anything else? Anybody else got the takeaway that they came away with on this morning? We want to send love and light. We want to send prayers to my mother this week. She's had a rough week this week. So let us all just send love and light to her, that even as she continues to age, that the word says, with long life shall I satisfy thee. And what that means is that even though we all have a line we're going to cross and transition back into that pure potential, on the way to that line we should have good health. Now, so I wish above all things that you prosper, even as your soul prospers. That from the top of your head to the sole of your feet, that every system, every organ, every cell is aligning with its design. So we send that to her this morning. All right. Okay. That's all I see. I'm sending love. Myrna says sending love. Mama. Let me see. Cheryl says she feels good today. Awesome. So, blessings are coming to each of your lives, and may you have some good vibes. And I'll package this. And until we meet again, you know that source is with you. It goes before you. It goes with you, and it stands behind you. You're covered. So have a wonderful day.
Your blessings upon me already here on the way, on the way.